What's up, everybody? Hi, my name is Robert.
And I'm Kenyatta.
And I'm Anita, and you are listening to The Love Project.
The Love Project. We are finally here. We go back years, don't we?
We do.
Many, many years. I think that this podcast and the different ways we view things will allow everyone to have just a new experience with what love feels like, what it sounds like. Most importantly, what it sounds like, because love deserves a clear, unique, updated voice because it changes from day to day.
Right, exactly. Kenyatta?
The only thing else I could consider is being completely naked, to be completely honest with what love is, of all forms of the love.
Right. I think that's a good way. The gritty. You said get naked with it, just the gritty love.
You said the gritty. That was my favorite part. My part was the naked. Because it's just a fun way of saying vulnerable.
Right.
But people don't like to. We don't always like to be vulnerable and naked in front of, the world. And I think there's something very beautiful about being able to just bear it all, because that one thing we don't think people can relate to, as soon as we say it, you all of a sudden see the people say, we're just waiting for one person to say it first.
Right, exactly. And we want to let the audience know that, listen, we are all Christians. That means we believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God and that he died for our sins. But we have different perspectives. And this show is going to make you very uncomfortable because we're going to talk about those things that the streets are talking about. And so we're not here to cause any ruckus.
I wonder if we maybe possibly are here to cause just a tad bit of ruckus. I only say but it's all in love. So
it's all in love.
All in love, so it's okay. But I know that we all know what our beliefs are, and we know that we have that in common, which is what originally bonded us. But I don't want our listeners to think that just because you do not share in our religious convictions, that this is not still the podcast for you.
Right.
That's the beautiful thing about the Love Project. It fits everyone. So even if you hear something that you have not deemed to be your core belief, that doesn't mean this isn't for you. This is just a way to push your thinking. I welcome anyone who's listening to anything we say. If you disagree or it just doesn't hit you the way we think it would, contact us, because I, for one, love hearing a different perspective. Because it's not always about beating someone up, over the head with your beliefs. It's about opening their minds to your beliefs. So that it has to be a two-way conversation if we expect anything to happen.
Today's subject, we're going to be talking about love through the ages. Baby boomers versus Generation X and onward. There's a lot of significant changes that took place during those generations. And there are actually, I believe, if I'm correct, 6 generations that live amongst each other. For example, you have the silent generation. That is, they were born between 1928 and 1945. So these are people on the top end would be like in their late 70s, mid 70s or something like that. And then after them, you have the baby boomers, which was born between 1946 and 1964. This is where we get the biggest boom of birth rates throughout the world. This is where you see major corporations like McDonald's and Ford and all these major companies and corporations that changed and shaped our culture and our world came because they were catering to this generation. And then there was Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. That's Kenyatta and myself, right?
Right.
Anita, or do we need to keep going?
Let's not start pulling out calculators or anything.
We know who the baby is. We know who the baby
I
is.
am not a part of Generation X. And that's okay. I'm okay with it.
So let's see, can we call you out next? The Millenniums.
Yeah. I mean, not to brag, but yes.
Born between 1981 and 1996. And then after them, you have Generation Z, born between 1997 and 2012. The Alpha generation was born between 2013 and 2025. And I think they would be on the high end, like the 10-year-olds of the world. Mm-hmm. They are Generation Alpha. Now, all of these generations dealt with love through the ages differently. I believe the silent generation, this is the generation that I guess Kenyatta help me. They were the ones, the people that were from like 1928 and 1945. What was significantly going on in the world was conservatism. These people were extraordinarily conservative. Mm-hmm. This is where you see wife at home. A man went to work, very conservative, right? These are the people that they wanted to buy the house, and you remember the guy used to come to the door and knock on the door and say, "It's the man of the house at home," and let me get my husband, right?
Oh, is that how she sounded? I wasn't there.
And then you had the baby boomers that just kind of came in and just blew all of those expectations up, right? And so, but they control the majority of the money in the world. And so they feel, from my perspective, they would feel like they got the right to tell us what to do.
I think that every generation feels like they're coaching the next generation.
Yeah.
Does that make them actual coaches, or does that mean that they were just in that space at that time?
Right.
A lot of times when you get one generation and they begin to talk to another generation about anything, but especially about love and family and structure, of course they have it together because in their time and space, it absolutely worked, or it seemed to work.
Right. Yeah.
However, the one thing that is inevitable, change. So if the world changes, then everything has to change with it.
I think that the boomer generation, which is my parents' generation, they messed up a lot of stuff.
As coaches, or as players?
All of the above. I think
they were coaches and players on it.
They were. I think they're still making lots of mistakes. Right. But I think as we get further in, I'll open up and say more. But I really think what happened is that they intentionally decided, I'm going to disrupt everything every other generation did, and it automatically kind of slid down toward us in a lot of different ways. And now how we respond to it is differently. Our generation X, millennial, and the generation after that.
Right, and I don't believe the Generation X runs anything.
We really don't. We're the smallest group.
Yes, and I don't think that we were leaders at all. I think we were the first to get a lot of stuff, to experience some things, especially when it comes down to stuff that happens on the internet.
Yeah, but cell phones.
Man, our kids don't respect what we think. They don't want to be like us. They don't want to be. I mean, so think about that, Anita. Come on, push back on me.
But do you really think that? Or is that just what kids do? They just think, oh, my parent, because the same way you say that about your children, I bet your parents will say the same thing about you, and their parents said the same thing about them.
You think so? Mm-hmm. So when you watch television, Fathers Know Best, Little House on the Prairie, all of these.
I'm back.
Pictures what'd you say?
You said Fathers Know Best. Hey, Little House on the Prairie.
Little House on the Prairie. So you had a strong male figure that seemed to have the last word, and the children aspired to be like their pa, or to make them proud. You even saw this a little bit in the Cosby Show. Yeah. That maybe it's some value or some principles that they had, that they figured life out, and man, I wanted to be like that.
Yeah.
You don't think that there was some of that going on?
I do, but I do think that we see what we want to see.
Okay.
Admiration and love, those are two very unique things, and they look very different. So you look at a show like Little House on the Prairie, and
Hmm.
you see kids striving to be like Paul because Paul had the final word. Or did Paul understand this is my role? But normally in those types of households, look how heavily they depended upon the mother. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
necessarily that he had the final word. He just probably did a really good job or a better job than some of us do with picking our partners.
That's so good and so
I
valid.
like that. I think that she's making a compelling argument that I like what you said that it worked,
Hmm.
and maybe it worked because of the side of the fence I was on looking at it.
Yeah.
And maybe it was more about the choices, personal choices that they were making in terms of they took picking a spouse or whatever a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
So it worked for them. They had
Right.
not that Paul saw himself better than or different than, but they just had a relationship at that time that just worked out for their betterment and for everyone.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I guess in some households today, because that same dynamic still exists. So yeah, okay, all right, I got you.
It
I
exists.
got
It
you.
just exists in a different way because, again, times are different. We lived in well, I didn't live in a time period, but there's a time period where I don't know what this feels like.
Right.
There are certain time periods where it was just the norm. Mom, you do not leave the house.
Yeah.
Your job is to be the homemaker. I was
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
watching a video the other day, yesterday, I believe, and it was of a man, I think he was like 93, and he had recently lost his wife, and he was going through some of her things. And he was
Mm-hmm.
telling the story of how she wanted for nothing. And he was going through her shoes and he was talking about how many shoes she bought. And the granddaughters were kind of laughing at him. And he made the comment, it was my job to get out and go make all the money I could. And when I made that money, I brought it home and I gave it to her. And it
Hmm.
was her job to make sure no one in this house was without anything. So
Mm.
there's just this partnership that
Right.
existed in the minds of some of the older generations that I do think some of the younger generations miss. So we sometimes get obsessed with who does what.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be all about that. When you truly love a person and you are their partner, gender roles don't matter, but that partnership and that love, that is what matters. And that's how they were able to sustain, I think, in some ways, in a way that we don't.
Did you see that as being something true, Kenyatta? You see that as true?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think, like you mentioned, current times and gender roles. Sometimes it's the male that's at the house and the wife makes more money, which is fine. It doesn't matter long as it works for your family. It's just long as the machine keeps working and the kids are feeling healthy and safe and secure and growing properly. It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
I gotta hit the beat. 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 I gotta hit the
Now, I do think that every generation, kind of like Anita was saying, all of them had some form or some need of intimacy. Now, they
Yeah.
may have interpreted that differently amongst each other, but all generations, intimacy and partnership is something that all generations crave. So, can we agree with that? That all these generations have these things in common.
Mhm.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So here's the question: how have these societal shifts and technological advancement impacted the way baby boomers, Generation X, and onward, how they understand and experience love and relationships?
I think that the technology, I think our parents' generation, they saw a lot of changes. They're post-war children, and a lot of they were impacted by different things, like the television. It went from radio to television, from black and white to color at the same time.
The moonwalk.
The moonwalk. Cultural changes were happening
Which
at
didn't
exactly the same
happen.
time.
The moonwalk didn't happen.
They saw an assassination while watching TV. I mean, they were truly impacted by what they saw and experienced. They were more open to sharing their love with more than one individual. It was huge changes because of that during that period of time. And I think when it trans over to Generation X, we were slower about going into marriage.
I agree with a lot of what Kenyatta says. I do think that there was this shift in the more recent generations, and it was a shift from love. I do also believe that it was the fault of our parents and our parents' parents. Because I think about a lot of things, and here's my rabbit hole. I think of how young people used to get married, and I used to wonder, like, why would someone back then already struggling, barely have anything, why would a 14, 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old be begging to get married? And I started talking to people who did marry at such a young age, and I will never forget. It's just kind of embedded in my brain. Someone said that they were married at a very young age because they knew it was better to marry than to burn.
Wow.
And I said, really? So
Right.
that is something that was instilled in them by their older parents. Now, is that true? It's biblical. It's in Corinthians. I'm not saying it's not biblical.
Yeah.
But they missed an opportunity to really understand what that meant, and they missed an opportunity to really get a good lesson out of that. Even instructing or encouraging someone at a young age, directing them to that scripture could have been an opportunity to teach them about self-control, not about finding an easy fix. So I think we do shy away from quickly getting into marriages because it was almost like we felt like, well, I have to because I have an urge. And no one's teaching me how to fight against this urge or how to exercise self-control. So I guess I got to just go get married, and that's going to fix it all. It doesn't fix it all. So
that's an interesting perspective.
So
I like that.
I think that now we're like, oh, I just need to steer away from that for a little bit longer than my parents did. Not that we don't want that longevity, but we don't want the drama of having to grow up with our spouse. That's difficult. It's difficult to be an adult spouse, but can you imagine being a child spouse? I wouldn't want to get married either if I saw that occur. So,
right.
I don't know.
Now I think and I don't know where y'all fit this in what y'all just said, but I think there's an increased focus on individual happiness.
Agree.
Between these generations, it's I hear a lot more of or I see a lot more, kind of like what you said, Kenyatta, people focusing not on trying to make somebody else happy, but make themselves happy. And that brings in a fear to me socially. Like, what are my kids going to do with me when I get old and I can't?
They're gonna get you
nursing homes are going to be like
a new sweater vest, and they're going to take good care of you. That's what they're going to do.
You see what I'm talking about it. You see what I'm talking about it, right?
I'm never going to let it go.
Boys, we went outside, we played with our action figures, climbed trees. Boys did certain things, and the girls, they did other things, right? Like the easy bake ovens and all that type of stuff. Look, she's already giving pushback. Listen, just hold on, Linda. but it's like remember home ec, home ec
Yeah.
in school, where that was majority of women who were taking those classes, and I was interested in that. So, there were guys that were in that, but
Yeah, they were.
boys, they had vocational things that they were interested in, like working on cars and all that type of stuff. So it was almost as if there was a time where things were kind of defined. Girls did this, boys did that. Well, obviously we don't live in that world today. But wasn't that do you think that was a good thing?
I think we told you all that wasn't a good thing because we rebelled. Because what you're trying to do, not you, but what that generation was trying to do was control gender norms. You can't love me into a kitchen. Some of the most successful chefs, Bobby Flay, all of these successful chefs are men.
Yeah.
So you can't force what someone's passion is. And just because it doesn't look the way you think it should look, or you're afraid of what it could possibly mean, oh no, I'm going to force you into this pathway. I wasn't a doll person. I was outside, knees in the dirt, mud pies. Give me a tree and I dare you to get me out of it.
See, now we call that tomboys.
I was one too.
But
yeah.
Even so, what if that had been who I was, and my mother saw me outside, and because she was afraid of me not fitting into this box that some generation before said had to be, that she yanked me out of who I am. It doesn't. I just think that we are sometimes we love with so much control that it is just unbearable. And that is when people rebel. That is when people don't want the responsibility of caring for anybody besides themselves, because they have not been able to love themselves and be their true, authentic self for so long. That's the problem.
I'm more somewhere in the middle. I guess I'm Sweden. So I was a tomboy, but I also played with dolls at the same time. Like I enjoyed riding bicycles down the hill wearing skates, reckless, and jumping off of the house. At the same time, I want to go in the house, braid up my baby dolls, my Barbie dolls, and hair, and sew up an outfit. I was somewhere in between, and I think that I agree that we want the social thing where we want the flexibility to let a child be able to play with different things. I still would like them to understand it's still okay to be able to be in a certain gender norm, because I think right now it's a faux pas. It's like the reverse in the current in our current world. So it's like, don't take it completely around the other direction too. I think that we need to balance that thing out where it's okay the girl to be a little tough, and let them understand what it is to be soft, and a guy being tough, but maybe they also like to let's just say they like cook or be the choir. It's okay. It's that's fine, and be secure in that.
So where we at right now is gender norms were so concrete. Like I said, open it up saying girls do this, boys do that. It seemed like we're all in agreement that wasn't necessarily the best way to do things, because you just can't pigeonhole human beings like that. Because like to Anita's point, some of the best cooks in the world are men.
They are.
So there's more of a softer approach where it needs to be more flexible. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's communicating anything. The baby boomers had a different way they saw non-traditional relationships than Generation X. And the Millenniums as well. For example, just as simple as black and white relationships. The baby boomers. Well, I know their parents wouldn't for that.
Yeah, their parents.
I mean, just having mixed relationships, where the baby boomers, they really struggle with that. But we do see where they became a little bit more. Everybody now and again dated or messed around or fooled around with someone of the opposite, color. But it was really Generation X and the Millenniums that kind of it became more common to see black and white relationships. Do y'all agree, or y'all see something different?
I do agree, but I wonder if it became more common, or it was something that we could now do, because it wasn't necessarily happening more. Go back to slavery times. It was extremely common, for there to be multicultural relationships, whether it was, a slave owner's wife and a man of her choosing, or him with a woman of his choosing. But I think it became so taboo because of how historically we were introduced to those relationships, that it became just the forbidden thing to do. So did it just go away for years, and all of a sudden someone said, I think I'll try it again? No, I just think that it was something that was done in private. I think that's probably the biggest difference in the generations. Certain things were okay to do as long as it's our little secret, no one tells. And now we are living amongst a generation where they just live out loud, just whatever. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing. The one thing you can't take from them is that they are authentic to who they are. And it's up to us to kind of help steer them to figure out which of those things are truly good for them and not. But they are at least authentic to themselves.
Right. Kenyatta?
I love the point where you said they were hidden, because I remember reading a story, I don't know, a few weeks ago, where that a white man passed as black so he can stay married to a black woman, because he loved her so much. He passed as a black man. And
is that on Netflix?
No, it wasn't on Netflix. It was an article, and I thought, this is so interesting.
Did you read it? But okay.
Because that's rare. Because why would they choose? Because it was during the time of, I get Jim Crow. So you do choose to go through that so he could stay with the woman he loved.
The baby boomers had when they saw gay couples, because in the military it had what don't ask, don't tell.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah,
but and so now that same kind of stigma is out there when you see non-traditional relationships in those aspects, or people who identify differently in terms of male, female, non-gender, non-binary, things of that nature. So what do we think about that?
I don't know what we think. Yeah. I think they're people. We are all people. I do find it disheartening that we have to put any member of the LGBTQ plus community under such a microscope while we ignore every other group of individuals that we may or may not agree with. You can be a liar, you can be a cheater, you can come to church and sit next to your mistress. And hey,
what church was this?
I dare not say. I will not receive a letter in the mail. But I say, you know what? I won't even say that. How many times? Well, I don't know how many times. I will say we know of churches, even in just the Arkansas area where a minister has decided, you know what, I'm going to just go ahead and leave my wife for my mistress, and I'll just go over
Yeah.
here. And no one ostracizes these people the same way someone who is homosexual or gay or however they want to identify. We don't ostracize them, and all they do is come into a church and they sit on the back pew, and it's all of a
Mhm.
sudden, I don't understand that logic. If we are operating from a place of love, why are we allowing love to be so decisive? It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to agree with everything someone does. And there's a way to even express that if they
Yeah.
are willing to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it. Everybody doesn't want to hear your opinion. Everyone
Mm.
doesn't even want to hear your truth. Because how
Mhm.
dare you come to me as a stranger and talk to me about the life I'm either battling with, I'm going into a storm with, I'm in the midst of a storm with, or I'm coming out of a storm. And as a stranger, you see something from a distance and you automatically use love as a weapon. I don't want to hear it. I don't care if it's true or not. I do
Mm.
not want to hear it. So I just wish we would do better when it comes to that. Just like I'm sure the couple that Kenyatta referred
Mhm.
to, I bet
Yeah.
they wish someone had done better for them.
Mm. Kenyatta, what you think?
Gosh, a hot topic right there. Okay.
It's very hot.
It
Yes.
is.
So I would say I'm going to kind of dance off of yours a little bit. So I do believe that as Christians, we are supposed to reflect God's love to and everybody, if you agree or disagree. And everyone's sin is the same. All sin is the same. So the only thing we are supposed to do is love one another. If
Right.
there's anything, then let the Lord deal with that. We greet people with love and respect, hug them like you will hug anybody else, and treat them really well. But that's something between them and the Lord. That's all I
Mm.
gotta say.
I think I would say that we're living in a time where this stuff is just this culture just doesn't happen because two or three people decided to do something, right?
Right.
You know, there's a whole apparatus that is promoting, influencing, saying is cool, you know. So it's so as a young person growing up, especially there we have proof of homes that are, you know, single family homes, single parent homes. People
Mhm.
have been abused. People have a story,
Mhm.
and they also have an environment and a place that they come from that encourage a lot of different things.
Right.
And I think, you know, after a preacher preach a sermon or I teach a Bible study, we expect people to change on our time and not God's time.
That's good.
What y'all think about that? Let's closing remarks on that.
I agree. So there's an educator that I love to listen to. Her name is Rita Pearson, and she talks about being a champion for children. And one of the things she says is kids don't learn from people that they don't like. I would take kids out and just put people. We don't learn from people we don't like. We have to learn to make ourselves, more likable, more lovable, and more full of love. I do not understand the logic of thinking that, these issues, any of the issues we've talked about tonight, that came within the last 10 years, not even the last 20 years. Now, cell phones and recordings and social media may have exposed more in these last 10, 20 years.
Right.
But there's nothing new under the sun. These things are not new. I just want us to learn what love looks like in action, what it feels like in action. And if I truly love my brother, sister, or a stranger, I have no room left in my heart to do anything else. There's no room for judgment. There's no room for hatred. There's no room for bitterness. Just love. And I know it sounds cliche and I know it sounds very impossible, but it's really just that easy.
Yeah.
Be the energy in the world that you want to receive. And if we all just had that mindset, we wouldn't have to beat people over the head with a Bible or a Quran or anything else. Love would do it for us.
Kenyatta, you got anything you want to say on that?
Yeah, I agree. It goes back to everything y'all just said. We got to make sure that and I think I say this often in regular conversation, but it's basic. We got to treat people the way Christ wanted us to be, treat our neighbors. We got to be neighborly. And the basic thing we need to do is to love our neighbor. And condemnation, that's not our job. That wasn't our requirement. He didn't told us to do that. He told us to we'd extend our hand and be the Christ that on earth. And the only way we can do that is by loving others and treating them with respect. Let the word do the work. My job is to love you.
I like that. Let the word do the work.
Sure.
We're not everybody's Holy Spirit. You always say that, Kenyatta. And so we can't change people. Yeah, I'm not your Holy Spirit.
I like that a lot.
You like that?
I will say one more thing. And
go ahead.
Go ahead and get ready to hit me. I'm okay with that. I can't.
No. Obviously, this is something we're going to another level. You about to take us to another level.
No, a lot of times when we think about those who have different beliefs and live different lives, unintentionally we say a word, and I always listen to see if it's going to come up in conversation, and it's come up in our conversation, and that word is acceptance. Mm-hmm. Nobody asked us for our acceptance. Mm-hmm. I've never encountered anybody that said, "Hey, and if you don't mind, could you accept me?" I've never heard anyone say it. I've never been around anyone who is, an adulterer or a liar or a member of the LGBTQ community or any other group that feels ostracized. I've never heard them ask me to accept them. That is something that through our ethnocentric beliefs, we think they want. And they may not. That is just us thinking that we hold the key to this magical land and they want to be a part of our land. They didn't ask. No one ever asked. You know what I mean, though? And I don't think we do it. I don't think we do it in a mean way. I just think that we just sometimes forget that they didn't ask. And so to say, and Robert, just so you know, even though, you have on a sweater vest, I accept you.
I do it.
Your response,
okay, so
I didn't ask you to accept me because you are living your best sweater vest life.
Right.
They are out here living their very best life. Here we come as if we have the key. And they didn't ask. They didn't even ask for the door to be open. Now, I think we do need to do a little bit better when it comes to that. Just love. Love doesn't require acceptance. It doesn't require me to agree with everything. It just requires love.
Last thought, because we haven't even gone into the discussion questions really yet. We're still kind of in the introduction, so we're going to have a part 2. Right. But we talked about there's an increased focus on individual happiness. We talked about the acceptance of non-traditional relationships, and I think that we got some good thoughts out of that. But the last thing is there's been an increase in importance of communication. I think that we communicate in different ways now. Great. Sometimes picking up the phone, calling somebody may be irritating. They prefer you to text. But it just seems to me that all generations now, we're all wired together. And it's like when I was a kid, I remember there was this girl named Lachelle who was going to beat me up after school. I ran home. Nobody knew about that. I knew that I was embarrassed, and I probably was going to be, maybe 2 or 3 people would have known, and maybe I would have had to hide from her for about a week. Mm-hmm. But now, because we're all so connected, a bully can go viral and it's all over the world.
Right.
So how does this affect love in the sense of we having this increased importance of communication?
I think it's a two-edged sword. As
Mm.
anything, can be a weapon or it could be, a tool. It depends on whose hand it's in.
Ooh.
I think that it.
Mm.
Okay, had to pause for myself for a second.
Mhm.
That was good.
I think we just have to think about which we're going to use. To shy away from communication and the different methods of communication, I think it's irresponsible. We hated the internet until COVID told us you better love it, because without
Wow.
it, we could do everything. We could still go on job interviews. We could still teach. We could still learn. We could still worship. And it was okay. So it was used as a tool. I think
Mhm.
it is all about how we shape these tools. I think
Mm.
fear is what's making things like alternate methods of communication weaponized. If you're
Mhm.
so afraid of what it could be that you shy away from it and you don't guide the younger generation on how to appropriately interact with these tools, then it causes damage. But to
Right.
say just overall it's hurting communication, I don't believe that at all.
Mm. Kenyatta?
I think communication, it's it can it has the benefit of being positive, like Ania just mentioned. True, there's a opportunity to do something negative with it, but that's with anything. So that doesn't mean to avoid it. It just means it's time to maybe even take considerations, put some precautions, train people, like Anita was kind of talking about a moment ago. I think that especially with the younger generation, that's all they know. My generation, we know what a world is like without it. And sometimes we wish we didn't have it. But you know what? I can't live without my little smartphone. I pay my bills on it. It's my laptop. So I can't imagine not having one at this point in my life. I do everything on that thing. And I think that it's an essential part of our lives, and it's going to become more. It's not going away. Technology is growing, becoming so necessary in every area of our lives that we might as well accept it.
Right. So I would say that in terms of the increased importance of communication, I feel that yes, everybody is connected more. Totally, everybody is connected more. We used to have to wait until a certain day of the week and a certain time of the day to get world
Mhm.
news,
Yeah.
right? You get news now in an instant.
Right.
I didn't even know. Well, I was just scrolling and I found out that there was like a riot in
New York.
New York.
Hmm.
Did you know that, Anita?
No, I did not.
There's like a huge riot. Some YouTuber was going to give away PlayStations 5s and stuff
cars,
like that. And I don't know what happened, but he's being charged with inciting a riot. There's thousands of people
Kids.
tearing up New York right now. But
No.
again, you would have to wait until the Sunday paper, next week's paper, to read that. You get it now in an instant. And I try to tell my kids, I say, knowledge is not the problem. Wisdom is.
Right.
Google can tell you what's up the street, but it would never tell you what's around the corner. So we do need to, I don't know everything my children are watching.
Yeah.
Sometimes I ask them,
Yeah.
hey, what YouTube things do you like? One of my sons tell me I don't listen to music. I watch people play games.
Yeah.
And I watched one with them and I kind of saw I was kind of interested in it, but they keep up. Everything is now. Everything is now. That's not going anywhere. Yes, they're listening to you. Yes, they're watching you. Yes, China has your information. But
I'm so boring. If they want to spend their time watching me sitting here, checking emails and making sure I let my dog out, then I welcome them. There's more to the world than watching me do nothing.
That's a good note to end on. Listen, I think that our first discussion about love and our first episode with the Love Project was successful. Don't y'all think so?
I do think so.
I think we had a very candid conversation.
Yeah.
It's only going to get better.
Right.
This is part 1. Again, we're talking about love through the ages, and we're just talking about how things have changed. And in terms of love, any concluding remarks, anything you want to tell our audience in closing?
Stay tuned. I think that enjoy the journey, because we really are just really dipping our toes into what we really, really want to expose. And you already seen the first episode. And if you enjoyed this, just hold on. I am anticipating a lot more and a lot better and a lot deeper. So continue with us.
Okay. And Anita?
I think I just want to thank you all. I don't always have a safe place to be naked and vulnerable. And this is allowing me to just be me.
Right.
You may not always like it, but the one thing you will always get is consistency and an authentic version of myself. And if there was probably one thing I would want people to take away from this, is love in action.
That's good.
Love in action.
That's good.
Hey, like, share. So where can they find us, Kenyatta?
They can find us on Spotify or Apple or any of the major media. That also includes YouTube. Also check out our social media, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Actually, I think it's X now.
Right.
And leave a comment. And don't forget to follow and share.